Welcome back, everybody. And we are here with another segment of On the Fly, a casual conversation around coaching youth lacrosse. And I'm your host, Martin Bose, also serving as coach and player education director for Mass Youth Lax. Really excited to be joined by our guest today, Steve Reale, who has a lot of value to add to coaches through his experience both as a player and as a coach. And so, really excited to talk to him today about a number of different topics I think will be valuable for coaches and players and parents. Excited to get into this one. I just want to give a brief background for you, coach. You are a two times state champ in high school as a player. You were a leading scorer in Eastern Mass, and you have an extensive high school coaching background and currently now head coach for Chelmsford High School. But what I think is going to be really interesting for coaches is your experience at the youth level. You've got 5 years experience now as president of Chelmsford Youth Lacrosse with a heavy hand both in the boys and the girls side of that, which is incredibly valuable. You also are in charge of the director of the youth program for the Pink Whales. So I'm interested to learn a little bit more about that as well. In my preparation for this and our conversations, we've talked about some of the differences between, coming from a playing background to then going to a coaching background. And that's going to be a common theme today, as well as developing humans, right? Not just teaching the skills of lacrosse, but really helping athletes become better people. So really excited to have you on today. And let's start the conversation. So, anything you want to add to the introduction or your bio before we get going?
No, that was great. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited for this. Love spreading the knowledge and kind of the things that I've learned and kind of passing that on to the different groups and people that are interested in the sport that I love to, with everything I have. So excited for it.
Good stuff. And I do actually just want to do one more call out, which is this past spring, you earned an award through the MYL. Can you just tell us really quickly about what that award was and why you got it?
Yeah, sure. Actually, it's got to be my top achievement that we've earned since my time as president. We earned the Mass Youth Lacrosse Community Warrior Award. We had a fantastic time at the award ceremony the night before the convention. It was really humbling to hear. We have a great group of people that direct this program, and we all kind of fall on the same basis of, we want to give back to the community just as much as they've given to us. So we do a really good job within Chelmsford of teaching the kids that sport is sport, but you can also find some greatness in helping the people that need it most. We paired up with the Pink Whales Foundation, which does work for ALF, the ALS Foundation, as well as we did a row for the St. Jude Childhood Cancer Research. So again, just teaching the young kids that you can take your abilities on the field and give back to people that really can't do it, and just be strong and powerful in your voices within the community.
Love it. Well, congratulations on that. And thank you for that work that you're doing. So, let's get into the coaching mindset versus the playing mindset. You know, myself included in this category, right? Like I fell in love with the game as a player. And I think a lot of coaches can appreciate, like, man, I know what to do as a player, but when I'm coaching, it's just a very different experience, obviously. But let's kind of dive into some of those differences and, just to talk about what are the first things you think about when you're like, man, like this is what separates the playing mindset versus the coaching mindset and maybe some of the challenges that come along with the latter.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I played for a long time and I always knew that I was going to come back to be a coach, my dad was my coaches. Coaches to me have always been such an important part of my life. My high school coach is still pretty much one of the most powerful voices in my internal head. Even when I play now as a 42-year-old, I still hear him telling me to get my head up, pick up the ball, don't shoot low, all the stuff that they continually yell. So the coaching desire has always been there for me. My first foray into the high school level was at Burlington High for a year and then Woburn High. I was an offensive coordinator over there. And the struggles I found for the kids to kind of understand where I was getting from was because I was looking at it as a player, meaning I would find a concept that we want to instruct, but instead of being able to break it down from the start for a player that didn't know what I was talking about, I was using terminology and using kind of things, expectations that they knew what I was talking about because I knew what I was talking about. And it really, it did not gel, right? Like the X's and O's part of my coaching was not there. I would get frustrated. How do they not understand it? How come I could get it? I'd go out on the field. I know what I'm doing, and that's the type of stuff as young player coaches. It's definitely hard to turn that switch off. the one thing that I learned was, when I stepped away a little bit from the game and stepped back and I started watching some of these high level college coaches and these high level high school coaches that do it year over year over year, is instead of implementing terminologies and things that they assume people know, they taught the grassroots of it, right? They brought the foundation and then they let that develop for the individual group that they had. Because again, at the end of the day, especially in high school, you have a new group every year. Just like in college, it's a new group every year. So something that worked for the group prior may not work for this group. But if you have the core foundation to it, it's an easier way to teach it. And then you can develop it in multiple directions, which fit the program that you're trying to build while staying within the highway of what you're looking for. In the early on days, I just didn't have that. I didn't have that in my bag. It just wasn't there for me. Now I was still loved coaching and I still loved connecting with the kids and building that part of it. So that was always easy for me. But it was that aspect of shutting the player mentality and going into a coaching mentality. And when I found that I was able to do that, I actually started to learn the game a lot more, and it would help me be a player as we still play now. And it's easier, and I find it's easier to shut off your coach's mindset when you're playing than it is to shut off your player's mindset when you're coaching. Okay, so when you're a player, you're going to do things on the field that are going to get the aspect of that individual play, the ground ball, the shot, the pass, whatever. You may take some liberties on some of the things, but when you're a coach, you can't be teaching those liberties. You still have to stick to the fundamentals. And that's the hard part of shutting that difference off.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? It's easier. So let me just rephrase, like re-say that. It's easier to keep the coach's mindset out of your head when you're playing
Correct.
than it is to keep the player's mindset out of your head when you're coaching. And
Correct.
what if you were to pull like the one thought that sort of like is the most common? Like what's that player mindset trying to tell you to do that the coach mindset has to be like, no, 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 here's the right way to go, not that way.
It's very simple. Make the flashy play. And it's just, instead of making the simple play, like I preach to all my kids, a goal is 1 point, no matter if it's a top 90 shot underhand or it's a easy bounce shot. An assist is 1 point on the stat sheet. A goal is 1 point on the stat sheet. Do the play that's right. Taking a behind the back shot when it's not necessarily needed versus just putting the ball in the back of the net, right? So when you're on as a player, you're just going in the click, right? It's just, you got to go quickly. When you got to, as it happens, when you're a coach, you're seeing all different things happening and you're looking at the next play and this play and what's happening down the line. So, that flashiness, I think, is the hardest thing to kind of switch from. And I do it all the time. I mean, I think, Martin, I think you saw me a couple of weeks ago. I did it behind the back. And I think I told my high school kids, if you ever see me do that, just yell at me because I tell them not to do it all the time. It's just, it's that part. It's like when you're on the field, there's a warrior attitude, right? There's a fight for the play, fight for whatever it is. And you kind of switch. But when you're standing out a coach on a sideline without the stick in your hand, it's very easy to say, don't do that. Let's just go for the individual one. Let's go for the simple goal.
Right.
But, I do sympathize with the kids when I yell at them for taking a flashy shot, you know, that I do the same thing when I'm out on the field playing.
Sure.
So
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, and I think there's value to it. Like I've had a somewhat similar experience, but I would say one thing that has helped me is like the coach mindset on the field when I'm playing has leveled up my IQ in some ways and also keeps me in check. Is like I'll go for a shift or I'll play a session like we played together a few weeks ago. And on the ride home, I was like, I didn't cut enough. Like I preach about the importance of cutting, and I never did a diagonal cut through the middle and then waterfall through X. And it's like, you know, but that's really on the drive home. The coach clicks back in, is like, dude, like you didn't even consider that. Like, and yeah, it's just an interesting aspect. But let's keep it to the coaching side of things. And I want to just pull out a little bit more from your experience as the president of Chelmsford Youth Lacrosse in the mindset of coaching. What have been some of the focal points as you sort of manage other coaches, right? You've got boys coaches, girls coaches, first and second grade boys and girls coaches, right? For the boys, it's the bobbleheads, right? The girls are barely holding onto their stick. And the everyone's poking each other in the helmet, and it's like it's a totally different experience as a coach. You have to gamify everything. And then by the time you get to seventh and eighth grade, they actually can like really start to learn the game, and there some percentage of them are like, I want to go play high school lacrosse soon, you know? So talk about some of the sort of most important aspects that you've experienced that are the focal points to your fellow coaches, um, in conjunction with like that age gap, and maybe how the conversation with the 1-2 coaches might differ from the 5, 6, or 7, 8.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's crazy because that 1-2 game is not even close to what it is even at the 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So you have to kind of find the fundamental aspects of the sport that translate from 1, 2, and 3, 4, right? Like keeps moving up the line. And the easiest way I kind of sat back and thought about it was, as a program in a whole, the goal is to get the kids ready for the next level, right? So if you look at the 1-2s, the goal at the 1-2s is build the fundamentals that they're going to need at the 3-4s. So by the time they get to 3-4, those fundamentals are set. So now we can build the next level set of skills and fundamentals that have to happen after the 3-4s, 5-6, 7-8s, and but the 7-8 you want to get them ready for the high school level. Well, and what we do in Chelmsford, and not all towns do, but we are lucky enough and fortunate enough that we have some very large groups, right? A couple of years ago we had 61 2 boys. Now that was like herding cats. It was incredible. But we had 4 teams. Instead of breaking out the teams into 4 separate groups, and you got 4 different voices teaching the different fundamentals. We all, at the end of the day, we're all one program. So we do our groups, we practice together, right? We break them into, we call them skill groups, but they're really kind of, we try to group them out into similar level skills so that the drills aren't either being dominated by one group or slowed down by another. And you can kind of cater each drill to the level of play. Especially at the 1-2s, there's not much gameplay you have to learn, right? Because it's not really the game. It's the beginning parts of it. Ground balls, spatial awareness, passing and catching, how to shoot, those things, using your voice. Those are the key components of that 1-2 group we want to do. You're not sitting there wasting our hour and 15-minute practice putting in a man up, man down for the 1-2s, right? At the 3-4s, we build on that, right? So we got our ground balls that we do every day. We do our passing drills. Our spatial awareness drills is key, especially if they all see the ball. They all kind of clamp to the ball. You tell them to get in open. The big thing is we tell them to get into shapes, right? So if you got 4 kids on the side of the field, what's the best shape to be in? A square. So we all tell them to get in a square. If you rotate, you're in a diamond, things like that. Um, Even to a point where we'll tell them, hey, go be in a line, go in a straight line across, do something that's going to space you guys apart, and girls apart, because it's the best way to do it. Being right on top of someone doesn't always mean you're the open person. You got to get away. At the 3-4s, the field gets a little bigger. You start putting in a little more conceptual stuff. Again, not going too heavy on man up, man downs or offense and defense outside of just kind of spatial awareness, because it's a modified number. But again, teaching like the 2-man game at the 3-4 for the boys, massive, right? Because there's not a full group of players out there. So you can do a 2-man great game in any part of the field. So teaching that concept, the picks, the things like that, how to pass back, how to roll back, dodging with the ball, using your teammates. On the girl side, especially, it's continually using those fundamentals of passing, catching, cradling. And for some reason, I definitely find that the girls have a much easier time switching hands. Maybe it's just because they tend to listen a little bit more than the boys instead of hitting each other in the heads. But we really try to push those, like I said, those basic fundamentals that can translate all the way up the line. One of the biggest things I noticed when I got to the upper levels was that some of the fundamentals that maybe me and you had learned as kids, simple concepts of a man ball or things like that, they just weren't as strong when they were being taught when I got there. To a point at high school last year, I had to stop a practice and teach a group of kids how to do a man ball. And I was sort of blown away by the process of it all, because that's such a simple thing you can teach at the younger levels that to me was always a fundamental concept. So like just understanding your group, understanding your talent group, understanding your coaches. We are lucky enough in Chelmsford that we have a vast wealth of knowledge within our program. A lot of former players, a lot of former coaches, both on the boys and girls side. So we are very lucky to have that. And not all programs are like that. We are very cognizant of that issue. So what we try to do is build a coach's thing. So we do a coach's night where we try to have some drills and some booklets and things like that that we can pass along. For instance, with me being the high school coach at Chelmsford, I'm lucky enough that I can talk to the 7-8 select coaches, the 5-6 select coaches, and we're running our concepts. Same terminology, same warm up, same all of it. We bring in for the 7-8s, we actually have old kids that went through Chelmsford High, went to college, came back, right? They've seen the processes, they get it. And that's part of developing not just the player, but developing a young coach. You teach them how to do it at the select level or in the classic level. And it's just part of that fundamental aspects that you have to teach. You have to teach the simple things that work. And then once those are mastered, you build on them. You have fun with it, right? That's when you get into the fun. All right, let's try to put in a 1-4-1 this week, at the upper levels, or the 5-6. We're trying to put in a 1-4-1 at the classic just to see if they can get it. All right, let's get into a little man up stuff. Let's get into a little man down. On the girls' side, I coach with the 7-8 girls as well. I've been with these girls since they've been in third grade. Watching their progression has been absolutely incredible because we're doing that, right? We focused in 3-4s on spatial awareness, asking, catching, cutting, calling for the ball, carrying the stick in the right hands. 5-6, we started getting into a little bit of the backer defense. We started getting into some, offensive movements, some different plays. And now with the 7-8, I'll tell you, a classic, I don't even have to coach much. I sub them in. These girls know how to do it, and it's great to watch.
Really well said. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'd love to. There's a few things I want to pull out of that, but the first one being the spatial awareness drills. You gave us a few examples, some of the coaching cues of like you can be at a square or a diamond if you rotate with four players out there. You can get into a line. But if I'm a coach listening, can you give me like a specific kind of drill or focus point within a drill, or maybe it's a game that you play and there's like a point system to it, some sort of parameter that pulls out the spatial awareness? Because that's probably one of the most common. I think there's two or three things that come to my mind when I think the most common through lines that coaches struggle with. Spatial awareness being one of them, teaching catching being another, teaching to the different scale of skills being another, right? Within your group, you got some new players, some intermediate, some club players that have more experience. But if we're to zoom in on that spatial awareness category, what are some of your go-to drills, and how do you maybe cater them to the, let's say, 3-4 versus 7-8?
Okay. Yeah, sure. So at the lower levels, the 1, 2, 3, 4s, I do a drill where, you start the kids in an offensive group and you start the kids in a defensive group. They'll say, we have we'll say 4. We'll just yell the number 4. Now, 4 offensive guys have to run out. They have to get into a shape, run into the box, get into a shape. Once they get into the shape, we'll send an odd number of defenders. So if we have 4 offense, we'll send 3 defenders in. They have to run into the middle. At that point, we'll throw or roll a ball out to one of the corners, and we tell
Got it.
them sort of like they're on a string, right? So if top left has the ball and he's running to the right, everyone's kind of rotating down in and
I
keep
love that. Just to call out the brilliance of what you just started is like, oh, I see. Excluding the ball from the equation until the
right
spacing is
is there.
X. So
Yep.
I love that.
Yep. Because again, the ball is confusing, right? So get into a shape. So
And we talk all the time on this podcast about like, what are the drills we could be doing with a ball in our hand or a football or a basketball, right? Just to take the stick work out of the equation is such a game changer to focus on timing or spacing or particular footwork patterns, because man, controlling the ball and having the drop and the attempted scoop or the missed pass and the chase, it just adds those variables. So I think that's a really, really good one for coaches to think about is take your example. You can send a certain number of offensive players, and once they get into their shape, that triggers the defensive players to go get into once they're in their shape, now the ball becomes a part of the equation. I love that.
yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah. So, and then we do, you know, we call it the pen drill. We cut the field in half down in front of the goal, straight up to whatever the restraining line is going to be. And we'll do a 3v2 or 2v1 on half the field. And then when that play is done, we'll pop it over. Now, with the younger kids, it's very much choreographed, right? Where we're moving it slow. And again, we won't always use a ball or we'll use a tennis ball, just so it's just a little different than the actual gameplay. And we'll consistently yell, get in your shapes. If you got 3, you're in a triangle. Guys, get in your triangle, find your triangle. And again, this goes for the girls too. You do the same thing for the girls. Get in your triangle, get in your shape. Or simple, get in your shape. If you yell triangle, the other team knows. But if you say get in your shape, they tend to find their shape. They'll pop off and get into the space. Other terminology we use, and we use at the club level too, it's find the green, right? So it's like find an open space, field's green, find the green, get open, call for the ball. Don't stand still, kind of move while you're getting the ball. You pop it in half the field and you go right over to the other half of the field, so you get two groups running at the same time. That's a good one. It's a little more chaotic at the 1-2s, 3-4s you can pick up. 5-6s, it's a pretty much a staple drill. Anything that you can minimize the field, right? So we'll pull in and do short games. The speed lax is a very good one. Throw the ball out, you yell 43 or 55 or whatever, and the kids have to get it. Whoever gets the ball, it's get the ball, get into your shape, get in your space, defense match up on your guy. Those are more gameplay style ones, and that's where you can have some fun with it, right? White team versus maroon team. White team wins. Maroon team has to clean up the balls or something like that to make it fun. But there is a very good stationary drill. I like to run it out. I even run it at the high school sometimes just to get some reminders. You put 4 cones out, right? You have three players on the 4 cones. So it's 1, 2, 3 on leave a blank cone. And basically,
Are those bottom cones?
no, so it's just anywhere on the field, nothing with the field
Okay.
space. It's just 4
Okay.
cones, leave 1 cone empty. You start with the guy with the ball. He has to drive. You have 1 defender in the box, inside that box. So the guy with the ball has to drive to the open cone. Those other players have to rotate to the next cone like they were on a string. The defender then pops out to cover one of those people. You don't tell him. He has to make the decision. I'm going to cover this guy. The guy with the ball has to make the quick reaction to throw it to the other guy.
Okay,
Right?
I like this a lot, but let me make sure I understand the context. So we've got a box of
Yep. 4 cones.
7 yards, 10
Yeah, 5,
yards.
7 yards, 10 yards. If the
Okay,
bigger
depends
kids,
on the
yeah.
group.
Right.
Okay, and so 3 of those cones have 3 players each. 1
1 player
cone is
each on each
open, and then I have 1 player in the middle of the box as a
as
defender.
a defender.
Okay, and then one of the players in the corner has the ball,
Correct.
or in the middle.
In the corners, the outside cones,
All 3 of them have a ball, or just 1?
just 1. So they're
Okay.
working as a threesome on a string.
So first 3 players in line are working
Yep.
on a string.
Yep.
One of them has a ball, and they're gonna drive, I love that term, drive, run hard to the
Right.
open cone?
To the open cone. The defender can't cover the ball. He has to pick one of the 2 partners, right? So he doesn't know the guy with the ball doesn't know who he's going to. He has to cut to it. So the kid with the ball has to now make the decision after he drove of finding the non-covered player to make the pass to, right? And then the defender comes back into the middle, and then you drive to the next open cone, and he goes and picks out another 2 people, another person who
And
covers.
that same player that started with the ball still has it?
No, he has now moved on he's now an open partner.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
He's picked who he's gonna pass it to,
correct.
and now that new ball carrier can go to wherever the
Any
open cone is.
or wherever the open cone is, get it open, find the open guy. And again, what this works, and especially at the 1-2s, it teaches the person who isn't being covered to call for the ball. Help your teammate out, right? So if me, you, and Jeff are sitting on the 3 cones and you have the ball and you drive to the open one, the defender goes to the other player. I'm now Martin, I'm open. My stick's up. Teaches that player, all right, I found the voice. I'm passing it to the voice. That voice now catches it. Everything resets. You drive to the next one. Defender picks the next player.
So,
Yeah,
yep.
it's just, and
So
you,
you have the movement, you have the decision making, you have some communication. I love that. It's a great drill.
right.
And then
And
how do
then,
you rotate the new defender? Do you just do it for like a minute or so, and then you
yeah, we'll just run the same group before, and then we'll put right into the next group.
okay, and then so then the next time you just got to make sure, hey, whoever was the defender, you're on one of the cones this time.
Right. And then the good part
Cool.
about this drill is you can say you have a group and you're breaking your skill groups and stations and stuff. You can run this station as a 3 group, right? You can have 3 groups of this going at one time because it's not a big space, right? You could basically, if you had 3 stations on a full field, you'd have one on one side of the field, one on this could be run right in the middle, and it's great. And
Love
then
it.
at high school
What do you
level,
call that drill?
what's that?
What do you call that drill?
I call it the missing box. I don't know why. It's just such a way. Everyone I say it,
Cool.
the kids knew it. So
Works for me.
yeah. Um, The At the high school level, we spread it out a little bit more and we'll run it within the restraining box without cones. They'll have just general areas to run it on the field, and I'll add a second defender in. One has to
Mm,
carry the ball, one goes to it, almost like a slide and things like that. And I also love that drill too because it's sort of the precursor to another drill I run at the high school called the dodge the shorty. Right, so we start with four offensive players on a cone in the middle of the field inside the box. We have the defenders, three poles and one shorty in a 4-point box up at the top. I blow the whistle. The defenders run into the cone and then pop out. The offensive guys have to spread out and get a ball, and the ball has to work around to get to the shorty, and you want to dodge
mhm,
it. Right. So it talks about rotation. So it's really the precursor starter to that drill. Goes into the
mhm.
whole thing as you start a drill and a progression from the beginning. You add something new to it next, and they do it next. And so by the time you get to high school, the foundation's been built. It's just adding the next step onto it. So
Love it. Love it. Missing box drill. We're gonna have to get that one up on the Learn to
yeah,
Coach
I can
Lax
get that out. Yeah,
platform. Yeah, we're gonna work together on that.
sounds good.
So we'll keep the conversation moving here. You've already talked about this a little bit, but I want to highlight this aspect of understanding how to coach both boys and girls.
Hmm.
And I guess let's weave it into like your story. You know, you were obviously a boy player, and then you're coaching the boys, and then now you're coaching the girls. What were the one or two or three like biggest aha moments or like changes that you were like, I need to change the way that I coach this. And actually, I'm going to then bring this over to the boys game.
Right. Well, I'll start. I've told you this before. I find the girls' game to be extremely beautiful in the way it's played. The boys' game is my heart. It's my soul. I've been doing it for close to 35 years now. It's everything I want in a sport for kids and for adults. But when my daughter started playing the girls' game, I really started paying attention, and I was in awe almost in every time I'd see the upper level and the high school girls or college girls throw that pass and dodge and move. We're technically cheating with our pockets. Those girls can do some incredible things with almost next to nothing for a pocket. The game just seems to be more beautiful, if that makes any sense. Where the boys see is a little more brutality, kind of physical. The girls are still physical, but they have skill upon skill upon skill. So I've I have an older daughter, and luckily enough, she decided she wanted to play lacrosse in first grade, and it was a fantastic day. But I was like, I can't coach. I don't know the girls' game. I was always taught that the girls is so different than the boys. It's this and that. I was I'd go to practices, I'd watch, and I find that there were so many similarities. A ground ball is still a ground ball. You still got to pick it up. You still got to run. The goal is still the goal. The end game is to win the game and learn, and that's the same thing with the boys. Now, the rules, I still haven't met anyone that can truly tell me what shooting space is, but I will. It's the rules are the rules. The game is fundamentally the same. You're cradling, you're running with the ball, you're passing, you're finding the open player, you're shooting to score, you got the goalie, you're clearing, you're riding, you know, it's all the same concepts. So my daughter was a first grader, watched it, no idea what was happening. Second grade was the COVID year, it didn't happen. Third grade, started getting a little more into it. She really started falling in love with the sport. So I had to really focus on it to help her, because now I'm starting to do ground balls and things with her. So I started paying attention to the game and watching videos and listening and watching the girls' game and reading about it. And what I found was my love for the studying of the sport came back. And then I went to at one of the conventions at MYL, Tyrone Kroom had a class, and it was basically coaching the boys to coaching the girls' game. And when I walked into the class, I've known Ty for a long time. He had a whiteboard up, and it just had ground balls, net, field size, ball size, weight, all this stuff. And he just said, these are the similarities to the game. And it was everything of a fundamental concept was the same, right? It's just teaching the different rules, teaching the different things. But teaching a 1-2 or a 3-4 player how to run hard for a ground ball, or how to bend down properly and pick up a ground ball, or to use your voice, or to find a space, or how to shoot. And that's all the same, right? So once I figured out that I'm not afraid of this anymore, I started getting into it. And then I fell in love with coaching the girls' game. My daughter's in 8th grade. I've been coaching that group of girls in town and select and club levels and different tournaments. And I got to tell you, it's been probably one of my favorite things in the sport for me as a player or coach was watching these group of third and fourth grade girls grow up to what our seventh and eighth grade girls now, to a point that their development has been so good as a team and fundamentally sound. They are playing up in a league up in New Hampshire as seventh and eighth grade girls, and they are in the JV division, sitting 5-0 and beating up on high school level girls because they are fundamentally sound. Right.
Wow.
So it's the love of the sport that I was able to instill for these young girls and the other coaches that it's just fun to watch.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, as a boys player, girls terrified me when coaching them the first year. You didn't, you know, we grew up, it was loud, be this, be that. With the girls, I tended not to be, which actually helped me become a better coach on the boys' side because of my first reaction wasn't to be loud, it was to understand and
Mm.
explain. And if I was to be loud about something, I found myself more apt to walk to them after that being loud to them and pull them aside and explain it in a different context.
Mm.
And I take that, I applied it to the boys game, and then I realized, man, I'm a better coach doing it this way. I'm getting to more kids doing it this way. I think that was the biggest thing for me as a coach, bringing from girls to boys, was my ability to understand how to talk to young kids. Because again, I don't want to yell at a younger girl, a third, fourth grade girl, yell at them. Whereas a third, fourth grade boy, my son, for instance, my first instinct would be, if, he's not running hard, hustle, hustle, hustle. With the girls, you're not necessarily doing that. I will say though, girls lacrosse, into boys lacrosse, you have to be careful with the sticks and the stick checks. That was probably one of the harder things to understand because as a boy, you're taught to poke immediately. You use your stick. Use your feet first. So on a defensive side for the girls, we tell them feet first. Feet first at all points. You beat them with your feet because if you're gonna match feet with a girl and she's running next to you and she can't get by you, she's gonna either drop the ball or make a mistake because you're right there on her. I have now taken that concept as well to the younger boys. Instead of telling them to rely on their stick, let's rely on your feet, get them in a position, then make the stick check. So it's the stick checking of the girls where you have to time it, you have to use your feet, you have to be precise with it. Taking that mentality, applying it to the boys' side has been an incredible, incredible thing for the younger kids.
Love it. Makes a lot of sense. And I think I want to kind of highlight a few things. The first being, man, when the girls get the stick work to a certain level, it really is such a beautiful game to watch. And man, it is so hard to get stick work to that level. Catching and controlling the ball is objectively harder with a girl's stick because of the obviously smaller pocket. And I come from a similar perspective as you. Obviously, grew up playing the boys' game, coaching the boys' game, but very early in my coaching career, I was coaching both boys and girls. And it's a near and dear sort of truth for me, which is coming at it from a lens of what is the same, but what can be directly translated. And then I'm still learning more and more about what actually is shooting space, right? And some of the little nuances with the rules with checking and how that changes as they go from, say, fourth grade to fifth grade. There are some things that change. And as they get to high school, there's some things that change. And so understanding the things that are be helpful for girls of all ages, and I encourage people to check out the episode with Sydney Scales as we went into
Yeah,
detail with some of those
absolutely.
things. But, for me personally, I always encourage coaches to use the value of the girls' stick forces efficiency. And if I'm a boys coach, I would send players to use a girls' stick for wall ball or for to take home and do some homework of, hey, do all your dodges and your shots, do it with a girls' stick for 10 reps and then do it with your boys' stick for 10 reps. There's so much value in becoming more efficient. It's the best way to think about it because there's less room for error with the
Yeah,
girls' stick.
absolutely.
And it was just it was so profound for me because I was 23, 24 years old, second, third year in the pros. I started doing all of my practice with a girl stick because here I am coaching girls. I need to master the stick work of it. And it just made my game blossom as an offensive player because I realized all these bad habits I had because I got away with it with the boy stick. You can't get away with it with the girl stick. And so, yeah, really encourage coaches out there to try using a girl stick if you haven't, and get your young boys to actually practice with it because it'll be a game changer for them. But the new sticks now with the mesh and a lot of these new brands now, they actually do have a little bit of a pocket. And so, what girls can do is now better, but some of the cheapest stick you can go buy, it won't have a pocket and it makes a big difference. So secondary encouragement here for coaches that coach girls, spend the extra 15 bucks if you can to get the stick that actually has a sweet spot of a pocket because it'll really make catching and cradling and scooping a lot easier.
One thing I will say too, if you are a boys coach or boys player and you are coaching girls for the first time, do yourself a favor and bring a girl stick for yourself. I made those mistakes early on as I would show up with a boy stick and I would be able to do certain things with a boy stick that the girls had no chance of doing with the girl stick, right? So when you're warming up a goalie shooting off with a boy stick, it comes out differently. It's a different view. So as the girls got older and warming up goalies, you got to be able to shoot with the girl stick because they have to practice tracking that ball. Even just demonstrating drills. I can demonstrate with a boy stick one thing, maybe you wouldn't hold your hands the same way on a girl stick. So there's no point of you bringing a boy stick that they can't use. If you have the ability and you have to bring a girl stick, I would recommend if you are a boys coach going to coach the girls, use a girl stick in that practice.
Ditto. Yeah, couldn't agree more. All right. So, at the sake of time, kind of one more segment and category I want to go over with you.
Sure.
You know, coaching it's a big responsibility. And so, yes, we're coaching lacrosse, but based on our conversations in the past and certainly what we both believe to be true, it's much bigger than that. And so, how has that shifted for you in your coaching career? What are some of the best practices that you've found as far as building better people as using lacrosse as a vehicle to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. In my high school program and even in my youth program, I really tout the point of emphasis of that I want to make better men than I do lacrosse players. I find to be a better lacrosse player is a byproduct of being a better man, right? And being a better person and a human. Learning to take the sport, which a lot of, we all know as the medicine game. For me, it has given me the ability to have a avenue to step back when work and life and things are tough. I can go coach. It's my vice, right? I can go out my backyard and play the wall ball, which is I've been doing since I've been in middle school as my vice. But to be able to teach as a high school, you know, teach a high school player that there's more to life than what's happening in front of you at that very moment is something that I really try to find value in for as a coach and as just a general human, right? Like I want to be someone that these kids can leave after high school and want to come back and talk to and want to, check in and see how I'm doing and that might sound a little selfish on my part, but it just means that I did my part in getting them to the next level and their experience of me was remembered. Like I said earlier, my coaches in my life have been some of the most important people, right? So I always want to go back to them and hear them in the back of my head when I'm playing the game and things like that. Um, I find that high school is tough, right? We all remember high school as what it was for us, but when you look back and you see what these kids have to go through, they got a lot going on. Lacrosse and sports is not always a priority when it comes to schooling and colleges and parents and boyfriend girlfriend issues, things like that. So I want them to use the hour, 2 hours of lacrosse as their breakaway, right? When they step on that field, anything that's happening in school, at home, like I said, with friends or this and that isn't there. You have 1 hour and 30 minutes or 2 hours, depending on the game, to be yourself and find relief in the sport of lacrosse. That's why the medicine game is so incredible. Um, but in part of that is also teaching kids that if a teammate's having a hard time dropping passes, I don't want to hear you beating them down or telling them they know they have to pick that ball up. They're beating themselves up far more than anything you could do. So let's pick them up. Right. So in those of things that I try to bring on to them as a team, I find ways during practice where I can talk to them about how that affects them in life, right? Like how a game is going to affect you in life and how are you going to react to it? I'm not a overly overly religious person, but I do believe in a lot of the words, and I find words and inspirations and, you know, different things that I see. I like finding those things and passing them on to the kids, right? Like, so finding some sort of phrase or something in a book that means something to me, I try to pass along to the kids having a hard day. And I want them to be able to find those aspects and those avenues in life that they can, if I'm having a tough day, I'm going to go read a book, or I'm going to go listen to a podcast, or I'm going to go do this. I'm not going to go turn around and do something stupid. I'm not going to be a jerk to my mom and dad. I'm not going to be a jerk to my friends and people who are helping me. Right. I want them to understand that people are there to help you as a high school athlete. Take that, take the help that's given, and just remember that, because one day you're going to be in a position to help the next high school athlete or even young player. So I know that's kind of long winded, but with all that, there's certain things we have to do as coaches to build that up. Communication has to be the biggest thing. You have to be able to talk to the kids in the way that that gets through to them. Some kids need to be more, strict with their stuff. Some kids need to be a little more handheld. Some kids just need someone to talk to. And it's not just about, hey, what are we doing on offense? I'll walk up to the kids in the stretching lines and I'll just say, hey, how was your day today? How's school going? How's this happening? If I know something's going on at home, I'll try to pull them around the side after practice and just say, hey, how's everything going? You good? And you need anything? We're always here if you need us. And it's not just me. My assistant coaches do the same thing. Like, we really preach that we're there for the kids, not just as coaches. We are outlets for them as well. Because if we can be the outlet in that aspect, we're going to get the best of them on the lacrosse field. Giving back to the community has to be a part, because we talked about the pink whales of the youth stuff. Well, the high school kids, we want them giving back to the youth kids. These youth players look at high school kids as pro athletes, right? You send a couple high school kids down to a 1-2 practice, those kids asking autographs, so we want to really try to push that as well. But what that also does is the high school kids see the look on those kids' faces, and it gives them the pride. I got to give back. I want to give back. Because at the end of the day, we want to give these kids such an experience that's good here that they want to come back and give the next generation a good experience as well. So,
Thank you so much for sharing all that, man. I think you're an example of a living testament of sort of living it yourself and being able to apply. You're a business owner, you're a coach, you have multiple different roles and hats that you wear. You've got a family. Like, when you come from a place of I'm going to embody this myself, it becomes a lot more natural and authentic to sort of impart those lessons to others as opposed to do as I say, not as I do, right? And I think for youth coaches, something really, really tangible is like, what do you get the most excited over as a coach? What are the things that happen on a practice field or a game field that you like become ecstatic, like, are you kidding me? That was the best thing I've ever, that was awesome. Like, everybody, let's go. And it's like, if it's for character building things, for character building moments where someone helps someone up on the other team, or someone makes the extra pass even though they weren't paying attention, or someone made a mistake and they gave effort right away, or someone made a mistake and went palms up but then they bounced back and they're getting better at that skill of staying positive, and the growth mindset behind like being more behavior oriented as opposed to results oriented, and what that means as a coach, that makes all the difference when you're the one getting fired up and excited for like something that the kids might even be confused about at first, right? Where like something happened and like maybe someone dropped the ball and they think you're going to be mad. They're like, stop the play. Hold on a second. Did you guys see how hard Johnny just ran to go try to make that play up? Like, that was awesome. Yeah, he made a mistake, but look at the effort that comes after that mistake. That's the stuff that really, brings this team together and it gives us an edge. And so I think that's a good thing for coaches to remind themselves
absolutely.
of is like, A, live it yourself, and only preach about what's authentic and true to you, that you can actually speak from experience, not just belief, as well as be strategic about the things you get most excited about as a coach, and you can really have an influence maybe bigger than we sometimes realize as coaches.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think youth coaches and coaches in general, sometimes it gets missed with how big of an impact we can have on someone's life, even if it's just 6 weeks in the spring. Right? You can really change someone's life for the better, just taking the time to understand and be there and just be present in the moment. Like I said, you get excited about the little things. I get sometimes overly excited about some of these little things that happen, but it's just part of my nature. I just love the way that this program's growing.
Love Well, we'll wrap it up here. I just want to say thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing some of your knowledge. Obviously, this was tip of the iceberg, and maybe we can continue to do this. And I really think you add a lot of value. But before we kind of wrap it up, anything you'd want to sort of add or throw in there for coaches to think about before we close this out?
I think we kind of hit everything. I think I got all my notes down. So
Good stuff.
yeah, I think actually, you know what? One last thing I will say: never be like, always ask. Oh, someone in the lacrosse community is always willing to help and ask questions, and that's how I've learned 90% of my stuff. Is I never afraid to ask. If I saw a town that did something nice, I'm gonna talk to them about it. Hey, that was great. How'd you get them do that? You know, I see different things around the state. I'm gonna talk to them about it, and just be willing to listen and ask questions. I think that's the best thing a youth coach can do.
Love it. There's a humbleness to that. There's a curiosity to that. And there's also a willingness to like, you should be looking at what other coaches are doing and stealing what's working, like Coach Joey
Absolutely.
Picard
Right.
talks about that. It's like there's no shame in stealing other coaches' drills and stealing other coaches' sort of phrases and the way that they run things. So love it, Coach. Appreciate all the work you're doing. I'm sure we're going to do this again soon.
Yeah,
I want
absolutely.
to thank you, and thank you to the listeners out there. Thank you to Mass Youth Lax for powering this, and we will see you next week.
Unbelievable. Thank you guys. Have a good one.